You're listening to The Observing Eye. Pirate radio for the mind. Coming at you fresh from the computer hell cabin.
Hello, you beautiful lot. It's Friday, the 7th of June 2024, and you're listening to episode 68 of The Observing Eye, coming at you live from the computer hell cabin. Every week we get psychological, philosophical, and all manner of introspective. I'm David, and this week we are looking at parasocial relationships. Now, some of you may be aware that my day job is software engineering, so I am a big lover of technology and how people interact with technology. And I want to bring some of that into this episode, which is why I've gone down this route today. So bear with me, this will make sense as we get into the thick of it. Now, at this point, you might be wondering, what exactly is a parasocial relationship? Well, chances are that you've experienced one yourself without even realizing it. Picture this. You are eagerly awaiting for the latest episode of your TV show, your favorite TV show, the one with the characters that you feel like you know personally. Or maybe you follow a YouTuber whose life updates you anticipate as if they were a close friend. These are prime examples of parasocial relationships where we form emotional bonds with media personalities without ever interacting in the real world. In today's episode, we're going to unpack what parasocial relationships are, how they develop, and delve into the psychology behind them. We'll also weigh the pros and cons to determine if these relationships are ultimately beneficial or harmful. Whether you're a dedicated fan of a TV show, a loyal follower of an influencer, or simply curious about the nuances of human connection, then this episode is for you. Let's have a look at what are parasocial relationships. Now, parasocial relationships are one-sided, where one person extends emotional energy, interest, and time, and the other party, the persona, the celebrity, the transmitter, is completely unaware of the other's existence. These relationships are most commonly formed with celebrities, influencers, TV characters, or even, heaven forbid, podcast hosts. Essentially, it's a relationship where you feel connected to someone who doesn't know who you are. The term parasocial relationship was first coined in 1956 by sociologists Donald Horton and Richard Wall. They observed that people could form these pseudo-friendships through media, which at that time included television and radio. Imagine being in the 1950s, tuning in to your favorite radio show every evening. Over time, you start to feel like you know the host personally. You understand their sense of humor, their interests, and even their personal stories. But of course, the host has no idea who you are. That's a classic example of a parasocial relationship. In today's world, parasocial relationships have expanded far beyond radio and television. With the rise of the internet and social media, we have even more opportunities to form these types of connections. Think about your favorite YouTuber, the influencer you follow on Instagram, or the characters in the TV shows that you binge watch on Netflix. The more you engage with their content, the more you feel like you know them, even though the relationship is entirely one-sided. The characters or hosts might feel like familiar friends. You know their quirks, their backstories, and perhaps even intimate details about their lives. This familiarity breeds a sense of connection, despite the relationship being predominantly all from you. The persona you're invested in doesn't know anything about you, but that doesn't diminish the intensity or sincerity of your feelings. What's fascinating about parasocial relationships is how they blur the lines between reality and fiction, between personal connection and one-sided admiration. They offer a very interesting and intriguing form of companionship and entertainment, fulfilling our social needs in a way that traditional relationships might not. But what are the mechanisms behind this phenomena? And why do we feel so connected to people that we've never met? At the very core of parasocial relationships is the concept of repeated exposure. The more frequently we see, hear, or engage with someone, the more familiar they become to us. This concept is rooted in the mere exposure effect, a psychological phenomenon where people tend to develop a preference for things simply because they are familiar with them. For example, if you watch a particular TV show every week, the characters and hosts become a regular part of your life. Over time, this repeated exposure creates a sense of familiarity and comfort. It's like seeing a friend who you haven't spoken to in a while, but with whom you can easily pick up where you left off. This sense of familiarity then lays the groundwork for perceived intimacy. Perceived intimacy is the illusion of a close personal relationship that forms as we learn more about the personas that we follow. In many ways, media personalities are carefully crafted to evoke this feeling. If you imagine your favorite Twitch streamer or YouTuber or whomever you might follow on Instagram or Facebook or what have you, they very often share personal stories, behind the scenes glimpses of their lives, and even intimate details about their thoughts and feelings. This level of openness can make us feel like we know them on a personal level, even though the relationship is entirely one-sided. Another important factor in the development of parasocial relationships is the storytelling aspect of media. Storytelling is a powerful tool that evokes empathy and connection. And human beings, we are natural storytellers. So stories really hit home with us. It's how we've communicated for a long, long time. Now, whether it's a fictional character in a TV show or it's a real person sharing a life story on Twitch or social media, narratives draw us in. We become emotionally invested in their journeys, rooting for their successes and feeling their pain. This emotional investment is a key component of parasocial relationships. It's why we feel joy when our favorite character overcomes an obstacle, or why we feel sadness when a beloved TV show ends. The stories we follow become a part of our emotional world. We can also see that identification plays a role in the development of parasocial relationships. Identification is when we see aspects of ourselves in the people that we follow. This could be shared values, similar experiences, or even traits we aspire to have. For example, you might follow a fitness influencer because they inspire you to lead a healthier lifestyle. Or perhaps you feel a connection to a fictional character who faces challenges similar to your own. This identification creates a sense of personal relevance, making the parasocial relationship feel even more meaningful. Social media has amplified the potential for these connections by allowing for interaction, even if it's limited and one-sided. When a celebrity or influencer responds to a comment, likes a post, or acknowledges a fan in any way, it reinforces the sense of connection. These small interactions can feel incredibly significant, making the relationship seem more reciprocal than it actually is. This is why many people feel a deeper connection with influencers who actively engage with their followers compared to traditional celebrities who might seem more distant. Now, I was having a very interesting conversation about parasocial relationships yesterday with a friend of mine, and he made a really interesting point. Now, both of us are in our 40s. I'm sure he won't mind me saying that. And we were talking about how when we were younger, back in my day, and we didn't have the internet, and bear in mind this was like the 80s and stuff. So you didn't have, there wasn't that two-way connection. It was purely broadcasting. And remember, there was a new, this is in the UK, so apologies to anyone who is unfamiliar with this outside of the UK, but we had the news at 10 o'clock at night, and it was hosted by Trevor McDonald. And you couldn't talk to Trevor. Like, the only way that you could communicate with Trevor is sending a letter to ITV and hoping that he might get it. And, there was very, very little chance that he would ever write back to you, if he ever saw it at all, this letter. So there was absolutely no way of having this dynamic, this communication. And I guess, that's exactly the same, obviously, when it comes to like TV shows and films. You don't, I can't write a letter to Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory because he doesn't exist, right? So he's never going to see it because he's not actually a person. But when it comes to things like YouTube and social media and Twitch and Kick and all of the other streaming platforms that we have, you can get a direct response. And that's really different. That's a really different playing field to how it used to be with back when this term was coined back in the 50s, when it was broadcasting. There was no two-way communication at all. There was no way to communicate with, like, you know, your radio host. You might call in. If you were lucky, you get into like Art Bell and you could have a conversation about aliens, like probing Uranus and shit like that. But it was very, very different. So the landscape has changed dramatically in a very, very short space of time. And I personally am very interested to see how that's going to pan out in future, because it's clearly a really big thing. It's a really big thing. Now I'm into it. I have YouTubers and Twitch streamers and stuff that I follow. I like gaming, and I'm interested in a few other things. And there's a lot of people out there doing it, and a lot of people give them their due. They're very good. They're very charismatic. They're very engaging. They take time to engage with the audiences, and you can see the difference between those streamers, those YouTubers, those people on Twitch who engage with their audience and those who don't. And the ones that engage, they have so much bigger communities, so much greater following, because they are creating connection. And I'm intrigued about where that's going to go and how that's going to evolve in future, and what other ways there are going to be to communicate with these people that we follow and that we are emotionally invested in this space of social media and streaming. So that's something to think about. I digress from talking about how these parasocial relationships formed, but I thought that was an interesting point, something that I chatted about yesterday. So back to the discussion. So another factor to consider is the illusion of accessibility. Social media platforms give us the impression that we have direct access to the lives of the people that we follow. We see their daily routines, we see their personal struggles, we see their celebratory moments, and in a way, we live them alongside them. There's like a vicarious enactment of life through these people that we are engaged with. Now, this constant stream of content makes it seem like they are always present in our lives, further strengthening this parasocial bond. It's as if we've just got a backstage pass to their world, even though in reality, we are only seeing what they choose to share with us. Parasocial relationships also develop through what's called the parasocial interaction, which occurs when media consumers respond to media figures as if they were engaged in a two-way interaction. This is going back to what I said just now. It's very, very common in live streams. You get it in podcasts sometimes. You can go and talk to me on my Substack if you like, which is at theobservingeye.com. Please excuse that shameless marketing plug. And I will respond to you, because it's important for me to engage with my audience. And there is obviously a big component of that is I'm engaging with my audience because the point of this content, this podcast and the accompanying Substack and stuff that goes with it is to try to help people with their thinking and to give them ideas on how to improve their daily lives, essentially. So I want to go out there and I want to communicate. I want to talk to people and to give them my thoughts on things that they want to talk to me about. Not in a therapy sense, obviously, but I'm very, very happy to engage with the audience. But there is a component of it as well, which is creating the community and creating engagement. Because let's be brutally honest, let's be very authentic about this. I do this because I love it. But there is also an ego element to this where I'm thinking, where I look at it and go, oh, I've got another 5 subscribers to the podcast. Or I look at the analytics and I go, I've reached 1,000 people like this month who have listened to the episode. And there is an aspect of ego to that. There is an aspect of chasing that hedonic chase, I'll be very honest about that. I think I would be very interested to see if there is anyone out there who does any kind of content creation or streaming who doesn't in some small way feel that sense of like validation, in the sense that, oh, people are liking my content must be good, I must be all right at this. Hopefully I'm not talking shit. I'm sure I do. I'm sure I am. But you get where I'm coming from with this. This is very. There is an element of that as well, and I think it's important to recognize it. And all it does is enhances the overall parasocial experience. And then, of course, there's the emotional and cognitive effort that we invest in parasocial relationships. So just like in real life relationships, we spend time thinking about the personas that we follow, discussing them with friends, and seeking out more content related to them. And this investment, all it does is reinforces the emotional bond, making the relationship feel more significant. It's also important to note that parasocial relationships can develop at any stage of life, but they are particularly common during adolescence and early adulthood. During these formative years, individuals are more likely to seek out role models and sources of inspiration. Media figures can provide a sense of guidance and support, filling gaps that might not be met by real-life relationships. Additionally, Additionally, the anonymity and safety of parasocial relationships can be appealing, especially for individuals who might struggle with social anxiety or have difficulty forming real-life connections. So to summarize parasocial relationships, they develop through a combination of repeated exposure, perceived intimacy, storytelling, identification, interaction, and emotional investment. These relationships are nurtured by the familiarity and comfort we feel through regular engagement with media figures, the personal relevance we find in their stories, and the small but significant interactions that social media facilitates. Now, before we move on, a quick word from our sponsor. Now, contrary to my statements in previous episodes about I will never have a sponsor for this podcast, this week we have a sponsor for this podcast. And you'll be going, you fucking hypocrite! You hypocrite, you said there'd never be a sponsor! Well, there is. But it's me. I'm the sponsor. I'm sponsoring this podcast. In fact, I'm sponsoring this podcast with my new book called The Observing Eye, A Guide to Living a More Authentic Life. And the book came out last week, and it's available in Kindle, and it's available as a paperback copy across most regions. So if you're UK, US, Europe, South America, Eurasia, not Europe, what's Eurasia? What is Eurasia? Australasia, Oceania, Japan, wherever, all of those places. There are English versions available. I haven't translated it into multiple languages, I'm afraid. So you can find the book on Amazon, and if you are interested in the content, then you can purchase it and you can see what you think. It's essentially, the book takes a lot of stuff that we talk about in the podcasts, and it is all about trying to give you some tools, both philosophical and psychological, to help you increase your self-awareness and to live more in line with your actual values, as opposed to the values that are often imposed upon us by others and culture at large. So that's the purpose of the book. It is out there to try and help you improve your thinking and to solidify some of the things that we talk about in these episodes. Think of it as a framework for trying to think better and be more of your authentic self. That's the purpose of it. So that's available on Amazon as of now. So go buy a copy and let me know what you think. Put some comments in the Substack and give me your feedback. And if you have questions, you can message me on Substack and I will answer you to the best of my ability, which is at www.theobservingeye.com. So go find it there. But I will put the link to the book in the description and the show notes so you can find it if you are so inclined. Many thanks and much love. So we know what parasocial relationships are. We have an understanding of what causes them. Let's have a look at whether parasocial relationships are beneficial to us or not. So like many aspects of human psychology, the answer isn't straightforward. Parasocial relationships can have both positive and negative impacts depending upon how they are managed and the context in which they occur. And I think context is very, very important in this case. So let's explore both sides of the coin. Firstly, we're going to look at the potential benefits of parasocial relationships. Despite being one-sided, these connections can offer several advantages that contribute to our well-being and social lives. One of the primary benefits is emotional support. In times of stress, loneliness, or uncertainty, turning to a familiar and comforting figure can be incredibly soothing. For many people, parasocial relationships fill a gap left by a lack of real-life social interactions. For instance, during the COVID-19 pandemic, many found solace in binge-watching TV shows or following their favorite influencers, who provided a sense of normalcy and continuity amidst the chaos that was happening at the time. The consistent presence of these personas can offer stability and reassurance, acting as a coping mechanism during periods of difficulty. Another significant advantage is inspiration and motivation. Many people look up to celebrities, influencers, and public figures who exemplify qualities that they admire or aspire to achieve. A fitness influencer might inspire someone to adopt a healthier lifestyle, while a successful entrepreneur could motivate others to pursue their business dreams. These figures often serve as role models, demonstrating that success, resilience, and positivity are achievable goals. The stories they share, whether about overcoming obstacles or celebrating achievements, can be powerful motivators that encourage personal growth and self-improvement. Parasocial relationships also have a unique way of creating a sense of community. Fans of a particular show, celebrity, or influencer often come together to form communities, whether online or in real life. These fan communities provide a space for individuals to connect over shared interests, discuss their favorite moments, and support one another. These interactions can lead to genuine friendships and a sense of belonging, which are vital components of mental health and well-being. For example, fan conventions, online forums, Discord has ballooned lately into this huge thing and is very, very popular. And social media groups allow people to bond over their shared admiration for a persona, creating real-life social networks from these one-sided relationships. And of course, parasocial relationships can contribute to increased empathy and understanding. Through following the lives and stories of diverse personalities, people can gain insights into different cultures, lifestyles, and perspectives. This exposure can broaden horizons, challenge stereotypes, and promote a much more inclusive and empathetic worldview. For instance, following a celebrity who advocates for mental health awareness can enlighten fans about the struggles of mental illness and the importance of seeking help, creating a more compassionate and informed audience. Now, I want to give you an example, a real-world example of a YouTuber called Markiplier, whose real name is Mark Fishback. I hope I pronounced that right. Apologies to Markiplier if that is wrong. And how his parasocial relationship with his fans had a profoundly positive impact. So Markiplier is a huge YouTuber. He has over 30 million subscribers to his channel, which is substantial. It's bloody massive. He is known for these videos called Let's Play, which are like humorous commentary, and there's a lot of like connection that he creates with his audience. He's very charismatic. He's very good at connecting with the audience. Now, unlike many other online personalities, Markiplier has created a community that feels much more like a family than a collection of strangers on the internet, and that is a skill. There's a genuine skill. Now, there's an example I want to talk about of Markiplier, and There were a series of events, essentially, where he and his fans have worked together to raise money for various charitable causes. He's got a long history of using his platform to support charity, often hosting live streams where he plays games while encouraging viewers to donate to different causes. So these streams, not only did they raise significant amounts of money, but they strengthened the bond between Markiplier and his community. So in 2018, Markiplier hosted a charity live stream to raise funds for the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance. During this event, he shared personal stories about his struggles with mental health, creating a safe space for his viewers to feel understood and supported. His openness about his own experiences resonated deeply with many of his fans, some of whom were also battling similar issues. This event not only raised over $200,000 for the DBSA, but also highlighted the power of parasocial relationships in creating a supportive community. One particular story stands out from this event, and that's a fan named Sarah who wrote to Markiplier, thanking him for his candid discussion about mental health. Sarah had been struggling with severe depression and had felt isolated and hopeless. However, after watching Markiplier's streams and seeing his genuine care and concern for his viewers, she found the courage to seek help. Sarah's letter was one of many that Markiplier received, just demonstrating the huge impact that his openness and support had on the people that followed him. But the effects of his parasocial relationship extends way beyond mental health support. His community, inspired by his charitable efforts, often comes together to support various causes. In 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Markiplier hosted another charity livestream, this time raising over $1.1 million for the World Health Organization's COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund. His fans, motivated by his passion and dedication, contributed generously, which again shows us the collective power of positive parasocial communities. There's a lot here where there is a great power in bringing together people for a positive cause. In this instance, to me, that's a genuinely beneficial aspect of parasocial relationships. But it's a bit like the whole Spider-Man thing, isn't it? With great power comes great responsibility. In Markiplier's case, he took his natural ability to create community, to create good content, to engage with his audience, and to genuinely care about the interaction and the well-being, the welfare of the people who are engaging with him. And that in turn built this wonderful community of people who are willing to support others, who are willing to, and a safe space where people, particularly mental health stuff, it's always a tricky one, isn't it? I know that thankfully the stigma has died down significantly in recent years, but it's still a tricky subject. It's still a very tricky subject for a lot of people. So to have someone like that creating that sort of space where people can feel heard and can feel like their emotions are validated, like they're not just the only person experiencing this, I think that's hugely important. So now let's look at the other side of the coin. Let's look at some of the drawbacks of parasocial relationships. Now, one significant concern that I see is the development of unrealistic expectations. Because parasocial relationships are predominantly one-sided, there can be a tendency to idealize the persona involved. This idealization can lead to unrealistic standards and expectations, both for the persona and for the follower. When the reality doesn't match the idealized image, it can result in disappointment or disillusionment. For example, discovering that a beloved celebrity has flaws or makes mistakes or has lied to us can feel like a personal betrayal, even though these imperfections are just part of being human. Emotional dependency is another significant risk. For some individuals, parasocial relationships might become a primary source of emotional fulfillment, replacing real-life interactions. This can hinder the development of healthy, reciprocal relationships with friends, families, and peers. Over-reliance on parasocial relationships for emotional support can lead to social isolation and an inability to cope with real-life social situations. It's important to balance these relationships with actual social interaction to ensure that we have a well-rounded and fulfilling social life. Privacy issues and boundary violations also pose a threat in the context of parasocial relationships. The illusion of intimacy and accessibility can lead followers to feel an invasive sense of entitlement to the personal lives of the people that they follow. This can result in unwanted attention, harassment, or even stalking, as fans might overstep boundaries in their quest for a more personal connection. For example, celebrities often report instances where fans show up uninvited at their homes or bombard them with invasive messages, infringing on their privacy and personal space. So if you do that, stop it, basically. We may look, I say that with an element of jest, but also stop it. There is a distinct concern, I think, for popular streamers, YouTubers, personalities, where their boundaries can be crossed. And I think it's important for us as viewers, as the audience, to remember that this is a human being at the other end. And their responsibility is not to emotionally support us. Fundamentally, their responsibility is to be entertaining and interesting and engaging. That's their responsibility. It is a form of entertainment. And we have to remember that they're not just there to, they're people. Their role is to entertain, but they are human beings first. And we must act with compassion and consideration when interacting with them. That's important. I think that goes for anything, doesn't it, really? If we can aspire to act with compassion and consideration towards everybody, then the world will be a far nicer place to live in. Anyway, I digress. Let's talk more about the shit things about parasocial relationships. So let's look at how they can lead to negative comparisons and self-esteem issues. So constantly consuming curated content from influencers and celebrities can create unrealistic standards of beauty, success, and happiness. Followers might compare themselves unfavorably to these idealized images, leading to feelings of inadequacy, low self-esteem, and dissatisfaction with their own lives. The highly edited and often glamorous portrayal of lives on social media can make it difficult to remember that these depictions are not always as accurate as they appear. Another downside to consider is the potential for exploitation. Some influencers and celebrities might take advantage of their followers' loyalty and emotional investment for personal gain, otherwise known as pieces of shit. Not the followers, the influencers. This could involve promoting products or services that are not genuinely beneficial or ethical, like, shilling a crappy NFT egg game, I'll say no more, manipulating followers into financial transactions, just like pleading, I'm so poor, I can't pay the rent, please donate me some money on PayPal, or spreading misinformation. The trust inherent in parasocial relationships can make followers particularly vulnerable to such exploitation, highlighting the need for critical thinking and discernment in these interactions. So as an audience member, don't take everything at face value. Critical thinking is important. There is an episode all about critical thinking in the podcast, which I can cite as well if you want to go and have a listen to that, around how that works and some ideas around it. But so as an audience, we have the responsibility to question what someone is telling us. And as a content creator, as a streamer, we have a responsibility, I feel ethically and morally, to ensure the safety of our audience. And I'm sure, if I'm saying that to you and it resonates, then you don't need to hear it. Let's put it that way. There is a percentage of people who stream, and I've seen a fair few in the, not just in the research for this episode, but just generally, like following some stuff on YouTube. I've seen some horror stories of what how some streamers will behave towards their audience in order to either shill a crappy product for their own gain, or to kind of manipulate the audience into throwing money at them. And it's pretty tragic, I'm going to be honest. It's pretty shitty, and I do not advocate it. So I think there is a certain standard that we must hold ourselves to if we are creating content like that. And not taking advantage of vulnerable audience members is high up there on that list. So let's have a look at a real life, much as we looked at Markiplier as an example of how parasocial relationships can be positive in the world. Let's look at how they can go dangerously wrong. Amaranth, whose real name is Caitlin Siragusa, and again, I apologize if I pronounce these names incorrectly, is a very well-known streamer on Twitch. She gained fame through some quite entertaining streams. There was gaming, ASMR, cosplaying. ASMR is basically where people make weird noises, isn't it? And yeah, cosplay stuff. So she amassed millions of followers, and she was an engaging personality, and she created consistent content. So she got a big audience. She was engaging with the audience. Now, the downside of this fame became evident through a rather unsettling encounter with a fan. So in 2019, Amaranth experienced a situation that really showed us the dark side of parasocial relationships. One of her followers, who had developed a deep parasocial connection with her, took things too far. This fan, whose identity remains anonymous for privacy reasons, started by sending messages and gifts believing that these gestures would establish a real connection with Amaranth. The situation escalated when the fan began making disturbing comments in her chat, claiming to know her personally and expressing a sense of ownership over her. This delusional belief that he had a personal relationship with Amaranth was fueled by the regular, intimate nature of her streams, where she often directly addressed her audience, creating an illusion of direct interaction. Despite being repeatedly ignored and blocked, the fan's behavior grew more erratic and obsessive. He began stalking Amaranth, both online and offline, trying to find personal information about her and making attempts to contact her in real life. The fan even went as far as traveling to her city, believing he could meet her and take their quote-unquote relationship to the next level. This whole thing culminated in an incident where the fan managed to find Amaranth's home address. Now, one evening, he appeared at her doorstep demanding to see her, which obviously is going to put Amaranth in a very dangerous position because you don't know how crazy this crazy is going to get. Obviously, fearing for her safety, she called the police to handle the situation. The fan was arrested. But, of course, the ordeal is going to leave a lasting impact on her sense of security and well-being. Now, this is a very stark reminder of the potential dangers of parasocial relationships. For the fan, the constant exposure to Amaranth's content created a false sense of intimacy and connection. His inability to distinguish between the persona presented in the streams and real-life boundaries led to increasingly dangerous behavior. He ignored the reality that despite his feelings of closeness, Amaranth did not know him and had never reciprocated his attention. So that's really, really important. It's that issue of boundary again, isn't it? And you can never quite predict, can you, sometimes, how people are going to behave. And it is unfortunate that there is a distinct minority of people who are going to potentially behave like this. So it's important to have that in mind. I think if you are creating content in any form, don't overshare with your audience. You know, create a persona that you use as part of your content creation. They're not your friends. They're your audience. And you don't know who the other person is on the other side of that screen. So just bear that in mind. I know you probably know this. I know, I know this, David, just preaching to the converted. I'm saying it for reinforcement because it's important. And I don't want any one of you out there to be doing any sort of content creation and getting yourself into bother with this sort of stuff. I wouldn't want to see anybody have to go through something like this. So just keep that in your mind if you are doing any of this sort of content stuff, that it is important not to overshare and to be mindful of the risks that some of the parasocial relationships can bring. So let's talk a little bit about balancing the pros and cons. I'm not going to end it on that downer. Let's get back into something a little bit more positive. We're going to look at how we sort of balance this stuff out. And I think the key lies in awareness and moderation. So recognizing that these relationships are one-sided and should not replace real-life connections is crucial. Now, while it's perfectly normal and healthy to enjoy and engage with media personalities, it's important to maintain a diverse social network that includes reciprocal real-life relationships. And I count myself in that. I have a few people I follow on YouTube. I have some people I follow on Twitch. I know that they're not my friend. There is that boundary there. We talk in the sense of shared interests, and that's the point of it. You are talking with a group of people that have a shared interest, and you're getting something beneficial from that. So that's where we need to maintain that level, that boundary. So it's respecting the privacy and personal lives of the people that we follow, and understanding that what we see on the screen or online is only a curated portion of their lives. And we have to avoid placing unrealistic expectations on them because they're people, they're human beings. They've got their own struggles, their own imperfections. Let's not make their lives worse. They're just doing this stuff to entertain us, to create communities, to share interests. And that's where it should end. Additionally, we have to be mindful of how much time and emotional energy we invest in parasocial relationships. We have to ensure that they complement rather than dominate our social life. And we have to engage in activities and relationships that offer real-world social interaction and support. Diversifying our sources of inspiration and emotional support can lead to a much more balanced and fulfilling social experience. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I have to say on the subject of parasocial relationships. So what can we take away from this discussion? First and foremost, it's crucial to maintain a balanced perspective. Enjoy your favorite content and cherish the connections you feel, but always remember the one-sided nature of these relationships. Media personalities and characters, no matter how familiar or comforting they seem, do not know us personally. Recognizing this can help prevent the pitfalls of unrealistic expectations and becoming emotionally dependent. For media creators, being mindful of the influence that they wield is equally important. By creating a respectful and transparent relationship with their audiences, they can set appropriate boundaries and create a healthy environment for their followers. Clear communication, authenticity, and empathy can go a long way to maintaining a positive dynamic. Understanding parasocial relationships can help us engage more mindfully with the content that we consume. It allows us to appreciate the comfort and joy these connections bring while being aware of their limitations. Balancing parasocial interactions with reciprocal real-life relationships is the key to maintaining emotional well-being. I want to thank all of you for joining me today. As always, I deeply appreciate your time, and I hope that there has been something in this episode that you can take away and think about and apply to your own day-to-day lives. As always, if anything in this episode has resonated with you in any way, then I'd love to hear from you. You can share your stories via Substack at theobservingeye.com or on social media. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/@theobservingeye and on TikTok and Instagram with the handle @theobservingeye as well. Take care, everybody. Much love, and I'll catch you soon.
You've been listening to The Observing Eye. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I hope it's been useful. And if you're interested in any more of my writing or work around psychology, philosophy, and general day-to-day living, please go and take a look at my Substack, which is theobservingeye.com. And that's I as in the letter, not I as in the gelatinous organ through which you see. Take care, everybody. Much love, and I'll catch you soon.